If you want to burn more body fat, if it's in your protocols and have been approved to do this safely, exercise intensely for 20 to 60 minutes. The higher the intensity, obviously, the shorter that bout is going to be, and then move over into zone 2 cardio. And if you do that fasted, then indeed you will burn a higher percentage of body fat. But if you can't even get to the exercise, if you're somebody who just can't do the training at all, you're unwilling to or you're incapable of training unless you eat something, then obviously eating something makes the most sense. And what you eat prior to exercise, that's a whole other biz that people argue about and fight about, whether or not you should go into it with low carbohydrates or higher carbohydrates, all of that. But in general, the theme there is very simple, which is that you want insulin levels to be pretty low if your goal is body fat reduction. This could be distilled into a simple protocol whereby 3 or 4 times a week you do high intensity training followed by either nothing or followed by low intensity training, especially if you're able to do that fasted. And I should just mention that none of this stuff about fasted is about performance. If you want to perform really well, this is for reasons of performance and you want to, it's for a sport or a competition, it's not for body fat purposes. Well, then all of this kind of falls away and is modified by what's ideal to eat for performance. But what we're talking about today is how to optimize body fat loss. So I think you get the principle now. But you should all be asking yourselves, as scientists of yourselves, why would it be that certain patterns of exercise would lead to more or less fat loss? And again, it has to do with the neurons. It has to do with how we engage the nervous system. So while non-exercise activity-induced thermogenesis, NEAT, the fidgeting, and cold can induce thermogenesis by engaging shiver-type movement or low-level movements, big movements that are of very high intensity, meaning they require a lot of effort, deploy a lot of adrenaline, epinephrine from our neurons, and signal particular types and amounts of fat thermogenesis, fat oxidation. Whereas low-level intensity exercise, low or moderate intensity exercise, walking, running, biking, where you can do that easily, there's not very much adrenaline release. So adrenaline, and aka epinephrine, is really the final common path by which movement of any kind, whether or not it's low-level shiver or whether or not it's lifting a barbell, sprinting up a hill, or doing a long bike ride, adrenaline is the effector of fat loss. It's the trigger and it's the effector. So now I want to turn our attention to compounds that increase epinephrine and adrenaline, as well as compounds that work outside the adrenaline epinephrine pathway to increase the rates of fat loss. I almost always save compounds and supplements and things of that sort to the end because I do believe that people should look first toward behavioral tools and an understanding of the science before they look toward a supplement or a particular thing that they can extract from diet. This is mainly to try and shift people away from the kind of magic pill phenomenon or the idea that there is a magic pill, because there really isn't, and frankly, there never will be. But there are some compounds that can greatly increase fat oxidation and mobilization, and understanding which compounds increase oxidation or mobilization can be very useful if your goal is to accelerate fat loss. There are things that people can ingest that will allow them to oxidize more fat, and that occurs mainly by increasing the amount of epinephrine that is released from neurons that innervate fat tissue. One of the more common ones is one that you may already be using, which is caffeine. It's well established that caffeine can enhance performance if you're caffeine adapted. Now, caffeine for burning more fat, for oxidizing and mobilizing more fat, is an interesting one. It can be effective at dosages up to 400 milligrams. 400 milligrams is roughly a cup and a half of coffee or 2 cups of coffee. Nowadays, there's a lot more caffeine in coffee. So if you go to a typical cafe and you were to get their medium size, that would have close to a gram of caffeine, which is why if you're a regular caffeine consumer and you don't get that gram of caffeine in your coffee each day, you will get a headache. It can cause constriction and dilation of blood vessels in ways that's complicated, but you'll get a headache. Caffeine can enhance the amount of fat that you burn in any duration of exercise, and it can shift the percentage of fat that you oxidize compared to glycogen.